Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where we break down chess games to help you improve your play and have some fun along the way. Today, we're diving into an exciting game between Ongol Bull and opponent, featuring a less common opening that leads to some instructive moments right from the start. So, buckle up and let's get right into the opening phase. e4. Right off the bat, white grabs central space with e4. This is a classic way to start, aiming to control the center and open lines for the bishop and queen. g6. Black responds with g6, signaling a fianchetto setup for the bishop. This is a flexible and hypermodern approach, where black allows white to take the center initially but plans to challenge it later with pieces rather than pawns. d4. White follows up by reinforcing the center with d4. The key idea here is to establish a strong pawn duo in the center, which helps white dictate the pace of the game and prepare for rapid development. d6. Black plays d6, supporting the g7 bishop's diagonal and preparing to develop the knight to f6. This move also keeps options open for pawn breaks like e5 later on. Knight f3. White develops the knight to f3, attacking the center and preparing to castle kingside. This is a natural developing move that also keeps an eye on the important e5 square. Bishop g7. Black fianchettos the bishop to g7, putting pressure on the long diagonal and aiming to control central dark squares. This bishop will be a key piece in black's defensive and counter-attacking plans. Knight c3. White develops the queen's knight to c3, adding more control over the center and supporting the d4 pawn. This also prepares for potential e4-e5 pushes in the future. Knight f6. Black develops the knight to f6, attacking white's e4 pawn and continuing to contest the center. This is standard development and keeps black's pieces active. Bishop d3. White brings out the bishop to d3, aiming at the kingside and supporting a potential e4-e5 advance. This move also prepares for kingside castling. c6. Black plays c6, a solid move that supports the d5 square and prepares for a possible d5 pawn break. It also restricts white's knight from jumping to b5 or d5 too easily. Bishop e3. White develops the bishop to e3, reinforcing the center and connecting the rooks. This move also prepares for queenside castling in some openings, but here white will castle kingside. Short castling. Black castles kingside, ensuring king safety and bringing the rook into play on the f8 square, which will be important for central and kingside operations. h3. White plays h3, a prophylactic move preventing black's pieces or pawns from landing on g4. This is a subtle but important move to keep the bishop and knight from annoying white's kingside setup. Rook e8. Black places the rook on e8, supporting a future e5 pawn push and increasing control over the e-file. This is a thematic move in many openings where black wants to challenge the center. Short castling. White castles kingside, completing development and connecting the rooks. Both sides are now ready to start maneuvering for the middle game. Knight bd7. Black develops the queen's knight to d7, reinforcing control over e5 and preparing to support a central pawn break. This knight also helps defend key squares and prepares for potential exchanges. Queen d2. White moves the queen to d2, connecting the rooks and preparing to support the bishop on e3. However, here white misses a stronger plan. Pushing e5 immediately would have been more challenging for black, gaining space and opening lines. e5. Black seizes the moment and pushes e5, striking at white's center and opening lines for the pieces. This move gains a significant advantage of about one pawn in evaluation, showing that black's timing here is very effective. Bishop h6. White plays bishop h6, aiming to exchange black's powerful dark-squared bishop. This is a strategic attempt to weaken black's kingside defense, but it also allows black to respond actively. Bishop h8. Black retreats the bishop to h8, preserving the bishop for future activity. Interestingly, black misses a tactical opportunity here. Capturing on h6 immediately would have been better, as it would have disrupted white's pawn structure and reduced white's attacking chances. Rook fe1. White brings the rook to e1, aiming to reinforce control over the e-file and support potential central pawn breaks. This is a logical developing move, but here white actually misses a stronger plan. Pushing f4 would have been more ambitious. The key idea with f4 is to challenge black's strong pawn center and open lines for the bishop and rook, increasing attacking chances. So, while rook fe1 is solid, it's a bit passive in this dynamic position. Queen b6. Black moves the queen to b6, putting pressure on white's queenside pawns and eyeing the b2 pawn. This move increases black's activity, but the engine suggests that b5 would have been stronger here. Why? Because b5 supports a queenside pawn expansion, gaining space and preparing to open lines for black's rook and bishop. Queen b6 is fine, but b5 is more consistent with black's plan of active counterplay. Rook a b1. White responds by placing the rook on b1, defending the b2 pawn and preparing for potential pressure along the b-file. This is a natural move, coordinating the rook with the queen and keeping queenside solid. Bishop e6. Black develops the bishop to e6, aiming to exchange off white's strong dark squared bishop and solidify control over central squares. However, this move is a bit of a slip. The engine favors queen c7 instead, which keeps pressure on white's center and maintains flexibility. Bishop e6 allows white to challenge black's setup more easily, as the bishop can become a target and black's coordination suffers. Bishop e3. White retreats the bishop to e3, reinforcing control over the d4 and c5 squares and maintaining a strong presence in the center. This move also prepares to support the queenside and keeps options open for future pawn breaks. c5. Black pushes c5, striking at white's center and trying to open lines for the pieces. This is an aggressive attempt to challenge white's space advantage. But here, black misses a better move. Queen d8 would have been more prudent, keeping the queen flexible and avoiding premature commitments. The c5 push weakens some central control and can create targets for white to exploit. Bishop f4. White moves the bishop to f4, aiming to increase pressure on black's central pawns and control key squares. This is a good thematic move, but again, white misses a stronger plan. Pushing f4 would have been more forceful, directly challenging black's center and opening lines for an attack. Rook h5. Black swings the rook over to h5, an active attempt to create threats along the h-file and possibly support a kingside pawn push. This move shows black's intention to generate counterplay on the flank, which is important when the center is locked. Bishop e2. White retreats the bishop to e2, a defensive move that also prepares to challenge black's rook on h5. This move helps white consolidate and prepare for exchanges that favor white's position. Rook d8. Black brings the rook to d8, contesting the open d-file and increasing pressure on white's center. However, the engine points out that rook h4 would have been stronger here, aiming to harass white's bishop and increase kingside pressure. Rook d8 is solid but less ambitious. Bishop takes h5. White captures the rook on h5, gaining material and significantly improving white's position. This is a critical moment. White now has an extra rook, which is a huge advantage. The key idea here is that trading off black's active rook reduces black's attacking chances and simplifies into a winning endgame. Knight takes h5. Black recaptures with the knight, trying to maintain some presence on the kingside. Although black is down material, this move keeps some pressure and opens lines for potential counterplay. Bishop h6. White places the bishop on h6, aiming to restrict black's king and knight, and potentially threaten further weaknesses. This move is very thematic. White uses the bishop to control critical squares around black's king, increasing the pressure. Bishop takes c3. Black captures on c3, taking white's knight and trying to reduce white's attacking pieces. However, this is a blunder with a huge evaluation swing. The engine suggests bishop e5 would have been much better, developing the bishop actively and contesting key squares. Why is bishop takes c3 so problematic? Step by step. 1. It gives white the chance to recapture with the queen, maintaining strong central control. 2. It opens the b-file for white's rook, increasing white's activity. 3. It does not address black's immediate defensive needs around the king. The correct thought process here would be to prioritize king safety and piece activity over grabbing material. Black should have played bishop e5 to challenge white's bishop and keep the position more balanced. Queen takes c3, white recaptures with the queen, keeping the initiative and increasing pressure. Now white's queen is very active, and black's position is crumbling. Bishop takes a2, black grabs the pawn on a2, trying to gain some material compensation. This move is understandable but doesn't solve black's problems. White's attack and material advantage are overwhelming. g4, white pushes g4, a powerful attacking move aiming to open lines against black's king and restrict black's knight. This move highlights the importance of pawn breaks in attacking positions. d5, black pushes d5, trying to create counterplay in the center. This is a thematic attempt to open lines and challenge white's control. However, black is already under heavy pressure, and this move doesn't change the evaluation significantly. E takes d5, white captures on d5, maintaining the material advantage and opening lines for the rook and queen. This is a natural and strong continuation. f6, black pushes f6, trying to support the center and restrict white's bishop. But this move is a mistake. The engine suggests queen f6 would have been better, keeping the queen active and defending key squares. Rook bd1, white brings the rook to d1, doubling pressure on the open d-file and increasing control over the center. This is a textbook example of how to use open files effectively in the middle game. Bishop takes d5, black captures on d5, trying to simplify the position. However, this move is another mistake. King f7 would have been better to improve king safety and prepare to defend. G takes h5, white captures the knight on h5, increasing material advantage and opening the g file for potential attacks. This move further weakens black's kingside and highlights the importance of piece activity over material grabs. g5, black pushes g5, trying to block white's pawn and create counterplay. Unfortunately, this move is too slow and doesn't address the critical threats. The engine suggests c4 would have been better, aiming to open lines on the queenside and distract white. This sequence teaches us a lot about the importance of piece activity, king safety, and timely pawn breaks. Both players missed chances to improve their positions, but white's consistent pressure and better tactical awareness ultimately decided the game. Queen e3. Here white plays queen e3, a powerful centralizing move that immediately ramps up the pressure. The queen now eyes critical squares around black's king and coordinates beautifully with white's rook on e1. This move is a clear signal that white is ready to deliver a decisive blow. The key idea here is to increase piece activity and threaten tactical motifs like pins and forks. Notice how white's queen is not just sitting passively but actively targeting black's weaknesses. Queen c6, black responds with queen c6, trying to keep the queen active and defend key squares. However, this move is a missed opportunity. The engine suggests queen e6 would have been stronger. Why? Because queen e6 would have offered better defense by controlling important central squares and helping to block white's threats more effectively. Instead, queen c6 allows white to maintain a crushing initiative. This is a classic example of how subtle queen maneuvers can make or break your defense in the endgame. c4, white pushes c4, a strategic pawn break that restricts black's bishop and cuts off escape squares for black's king. This move also opens lines for white's rooks and queen to infiltrate. However, white misses an even stronger move here, queen e7, which would have been a more direct and forcing continuation toward mate. The key takeaway is that in winning positions, it's important to look for the most forcing moves to convert your advantage quickly. Still, c4 is a strong positional move that tightens the noose around black. Rook e8, black tries to activate the rook with rook e8, aiming to challenge white's queen and create counterplay. But again, this is a missed chance. The engine points out that queen c7 would have been better, as it would have kept the queen more centralized and defensive, helping to delay white's attack. This move shows a common mistake in losing positions, trying to create threats without fully addressing the opponent's immediate mating threats. Queen takes e8 check, white captures the rook with queen takes e8 check, delivering a check and winning a whole rook in the process. This move is the final nail in the coffin. White's material advantage is overwhelming, and black's king is completely exposed. The evaluation jumps dramatically here, signaling a forced mate in just a few moves. This teaches us the importance of tactical awareness. White spots the opportunity to simplify into a winning endgame by removing black's last active defender. So, what can we learn from this endgame phase? First, piece activity and coordination are absolutely crucial. White's queen and rooks work together seamlessly to create unstoppable threats. Second, in losing positions, it's vital to find the best defensive resources, like black's missed queen e6 and queen c7 moves, which could have prolonged resistance. Finally, always be on the lookout for forcing moves like checks and captures that can simplify the position and clinch the win. Thanks for sticking with me through this exciting finish. Remember, mastering the endgame is all about precision, patience, and spotting those tactical opportunities. Keep practicing, and you'll find yourself converting winning positions more confidently. Until next time, keep your eyes sharp and your moves sharper. Happy chessing!